So I've realized through my different uploads that I definitely skew more left than a lot of my viewer base, which is fine, kind of sad, but fine. I do think that this could be an opportunity for me to help move some of you towards my more progressive outlook for the party rather than the middle ground corporate one that Democrats have been going to recently that I think a lot of voters are just kind of falling in line with because they feel like if they don't, then they're going against the Democratic Party, where despite my views, I voted for Kamala, right? I was going to support Biden, which I do think is important. I think that at the end of the day, supporting the direction the party chooses is important. But I want to stress today why even if Marianne isn't your choice personally for the DNC chair, why trying to take the party, fighting to take the party in this more progressive direction that she definitely represents absolutely should be.
What went so wrong?
Well, it began with the fact that we didn't really have a primary. The DNC simply decided that it was their right to decide that it would be Joe Biden as the candidate. That's not the traditional role of a political party. The political party is supposed to facilitate democracy, not manipulate it or try to engineer it. But they were very overt this time. They said, we've decided it's going to be Biden. And then they sought to de-amplify and peripheralize people such as myself, Dean Phillips, Bobby Kennedy, et cetera. And then, of course, they did the same thing with Kamala Harris. So there was the juice, kind of the excitement of a Democratic primary, the Democratic voters really having access, really being exposed appropriately on the media. That didn't happen. The excitement wasn't there. The juice wasn't there.
And the primary is supposed to, first and foremost, be about finding the heart of your party so you know you're running the best candidate that represents your voters so they'll be motivated to vote for them. I think the days of just giving it to the incumbent should be long over. I mean, we see how that played out in this election, which is, I mean, both parties do this. Never let MAGA pretend it's only Democrats. Republicans did it in 2020. Both parties do it. I think it's anti-democratic, which is something that I even have to try to get into a lot of your heads. I realize, lovably, of course, but anytime I make like a pro Marianne video or a video speaking about how Biden and Kamala weren't progressive enough, I instantly get liberals ready to jump down my throat about how I'm giving the election to Trump and I'm the problem and lefties suck and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, I, again, voted for Kamala. I openly supported and told people they should have voted for her. I was going to do the same for Biden. But we need to get it out of our heads this way that we have to punish dissent in our party. That just makes us no different than MAGA. Elections like a DNC chair, elections like a primary are when we as a party should be having our differences, hashing them out. And then after that, we work together to decide, okay, let's push the party forward together in whatever direction it ultimately chooses. But I can now say confidently that if we don't move towards populism, we will be a dying party, akin to the Republicans after George Bush, a party without a constituency, right? We are simply not going to out-corporate the Republicans. We're not going to out-border hawk the Republicans. I think we need to rethink this strategy of like appealing to the middle and conservative voters and instead lean into what most of the left actually believes nowadays.
It sounds like you're saying Democrats should have held a legitimate convention for a new nominee. What difference would that have made? Do you think Kamala Harris would not have made it out on top?
Well, I'm not saying that. Maybe the people would have chosen her. But the point is the people's choice. You know, Thomas Jefferson said the only safe repository for power in the United States is in the hands of the people. So, yeah, I mean, if the people chose Kamala, then great. But we should have had debates, and we could have also had a blitz primary even after the president dropped out. So, yeah, once again, let the people decide. It's about the heart of democracy, and that's what's going to have to change going forward, that we're going to have to rebuild the frayed bonds of affection between the Democratic Party and not only our own electorate, but the people in general.
Now, I will say in retrospect, I think an open convention might have worked better or at least been fine, but I wholeheartedly do not blame the party for in a chaotic span of trying to figure out what they're going to do in 100 days running against essentially a mega superstar in Trump, like the biggest name possibly you could. You don't want to distract from that by first having to set up like an internal scramble for power, everybody setting up their different apparatuses and things for that, to then just have to turn around and build the infrastructure for a general election now. Maybe it's a smaller name than Kamala Harris that wins the primary, so you have a lot more building to do in terms of name recognition, but then you also have a lot less days because maybe the convention stuff carries over. You know, Kamala Harris had about a 2-week advantage on the convention of everyone knowing she was going to be the nominee. If we don't even have a nominee into the Democratic convention, then we have like 80 days, 70 days, 60 days days after then. I mean, like, who knows? I mean, it's really hard to tell which way would have worked better. To be fair, it's an unprecedented situation that both parties would have absolutely just been rolling the dice on. And I do think that the most fair thing the DNC could do would be putting the person who was on the ticket that got the votes, the person that literally when you vote for the president, you know that if something happens to the president, the vice president is stepping in. Like, you're voting for that ticket knowing that. I think that is clearly the fairest thing you could do. And I did push back against like what I would consider a lot to be just bad faith attacks of the right trying to call this process anti-democratic to like make themselves look better. Because again, RNC, DNC, private entities, not part of the government. Nothing about them is inherently democratic or anti-democratic. They can run their companies however they want. Instead, I thought focusing on the battle against Trump meant more, right? But what I knew and what did end up being the weakness is without running in a primary, we didn't have a candidate that truly represented the heart of the party. So in just 100 days, she both had to try and guess where the heart of the party was, combat Republican narratives, build out like some sort of a media tour she could do. And what she guessed was that the heart of the party was aligned with like the Bidenites and that corporate wing of the party. And it's just clear it was not, which I think shows another clear reason why we need to move away from that and have a changing of the guard from that center-left corporate type Democrat.
You know, a lot of the candidates for the DNC chair talk about a 50-state, 57-state plus territory strategy. I want to talk about a 365 days of the year strategy. I'm amazed sometimes when I talk to my Republican friends how well informed they are about the issues and the issues from the perspective of the Republican Party. We don't do enough of that. If I'm chair, we're going to have an infrastructure that creates far more communication going into the hearts and minds of the American people. This is what Trump is doing right now. This is the effect it will have in your life. This is what Democrats stand for in the House. This is what Democrats stand for in the House, in the Senate. This is what Democrats are doing all around the country in state houses around the country. This is how that would affect your life, and this is how you can participate in turning things around.
And she is remarkably the only DNC chair candidate talking like this. Everyone else is using the generic vague terms like 50-state strategy, we're going to media blitz, and blah, 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 while Marianne is talking like she actually understands the need to build out an apparatus in which we as a party can directly connect and relay information to you as the voter from our perspective, including the benefits and fights that Democrats take on, not just what Republicans are doing, like let's focus on this cycle, and then represent that at all levels. This is the biggest thing Democrats were missing in this election and probably what cost us it, right? While Republicans had consensus and all media, all elected officials where they're going to say Democrats bad, you know, this is how they ruin you and just elect Trump and we'll fix it because they don't have solutions, but elect Trump and we'll fix it was enough for them. They had this on social media, on YouTube, on mainstream media, and Congress. Meanwhile, the Democrats' only message was Trump bad, and their only platform was mainstream media, which is dying, right? This left people on the table that Democrats easily could have pulled into their constituency, but instead they decided to only court these super niche, like, democracy-fighting voters, right? Had they just spoke up on how, like, well, Democrats have proposed multiple minimum wage raises in these last 4 years. You feel like wages are a problem? We've been trying to fix it. Republicans have stopped it, right? Democrat states have been expanding health care to all their citizens, like, through tax-based funding, so you don't have to like get bankrupted by medical care. Democratic governors are buying up medical debt for pennies on the dollar and then just forgiving it, right? Like the list goes on, but none of that was brought up. I mean, hell, the campaign struggled to articulate its own successes of the Biden-Harris administration for that matter. So I think it's long past time to shake things up. And if Marianne herself is someone you have reservations for, I mean, that's fine. I at least urge you to push for a candidate that represents what she does. And to be realistic when you do it, because not being realistic is just going to hand it to one of the other candidates who are in the race. Jasmine Crockett is not leaving the House for this. AOC is not leaving the House for this. Now, Katie Porter, there's a realistic name. Stacey Abrams, that's a real name, right? Names like this are ones we can have a real conversation about. And if you want to learn more about it, I have a really interesting Substack. The link is in my description. You can read it and check it out and educate yourself even further.